Welcome to our second workshop on eco-community and permaculture in action class. Well done for making it. I just wanted to really honor you and thank you for all the comments and YouTube messages and emails that I have been receiving. It's been truly astonishing. The quantity of emails, comments, and everything coming from all social media is so much that it's sometimes hard to keep up. But I will be answering the comments on the community webinar because that's what I'm currently busy with right now. In today's class, I'm going to be sharing with you 9 pillars of successful community design. These pillars will give you a guidance as to what it takes to start up communities or continue already established communities so they stand the test of time. So you are part of the community, we're all part of the community, and to make our life easier, I have decided to create a social media network, like our own Facebook in a way, with specific topics according to these 9 pillars. We might be adding some more, and of course the food, shelter, water, education, energy, it's all going to be in there. And of course, as a community, we might decide that we'll be adding a few extra topics, and then we can discuss and share in the relevant groups, so we do not have to post everything to one page. So that way we can really bring the community together, share what's working and what is failing, and of course we'll be creating a full world map linking landowners as well as folk that are looking for land and established communities all on one map around the world. So this is all busy happening by our community. I don't know if you received an email in the last couple of weeks. I've asked folk to join our WhatsApp group, and this WhatsApp group will be having a Zoom call shortly to start delegating tasks so we can actually get the social media off the ground. I'm here for long term. I'm doing this for our children, for our forests, for our rivers, for our ecosystems, and of course for our communities, which are going to create a new model of reality, completely making the old one obsolete. We have to have a working model which will really self-replicate, self-regenerate, and multiply itself fractally all over the planet. And one of the most crucial things we've got to get right from the beginning is natural law. How much faith do you have in our Mother Earth? How much faith do you have in our Creator who created and designed our entire reality? So we really need to look at natural law as the most important pillar for our community creation, because if we're going to come in with all dogmatic beliefs and structures, which we currently do, we all have been trained up by the current schooling systems. We all come from the system thinking mentality of progress, science, and wherever they've pumped into us over the last millennia. So we really need to unweave all of that and look at natural law, natural order as the key starting point when we build our communities. But I'll be discussing much more about all the 9 pillars in just a little while. But right now I want to let you know what actually brought me to creating this seminar. Between myself and our team in Russia, as well as a few folk in America, we have traveled to various communities, seeing them totally crash, and for various reasons. And that's what brought me to compile the 9 pillars of successful community design, which are not limited to 9 pillars, but they're just what I have identified. As some of you may be aware, I have this online course which teaches folk how to create this dome as well as a super adobe one, and how to build all the ecosystems around your home, taking you completely off the grid and making you fully autonomous. But because I'm here for a long run, I wanted to present a holistic solution, because a lot of concerns have been that, we're not allowed to build these structures in America, New Zealand, Australia. They're really tightening up on the laws and rules and regulations. So because we do not have the knowledge of natural law, we have lost it. I mean, the trivium has been taken out of Russian schools about 50 years ago. So we have lost the knowledge and wisdom of natural law. And because of that, we cannot stand up to the system. The system of progress is just completely throttling us. All our faith is right now on the dollar, and whether we like it or not, it's kind of there, because when the money runs out and your son says, "Papa, food," all dreams go to out of the window, and we've got to do what we've got to do. But we've got to really start from the beginning, and that's why natural law is so crucial. So the holistic solution that I would like to present to you is building our homes, whether they're domes, vaults, or whatever natural structures that you'd like to construct, that they are nested in communities of like-minded folk that have either a theme of creating a healing community, or a training community, or a farming community, or a schooling community for children. Well, actually the school has to be part of every community, I believe, because we've got to train up our new generations in the correct way of thinking, with the right knowledge of permaculture, natural law, and biomimicry, and so on and so forth. So wherever the theme of your community is, the natural law is at the crux of it, and I cannot emphasize the importance of it. I'm still a baby in learning the natural law, because it's huge. It's like law, people studying law, they'll study property law, or they'll specialize in whatever law they're doing. But natural law is as huge. There's herbology, there is astronomy, there is patterning, and it's a huge field of study. So folks like Mark Passio as well as Manly P. Hall are sharing a lot of light on the subject, as well as many others, but they really need your support, because natural law, unlike anything else, is not a product. It comes from our mother, and therefore it's purely on donation basis. So the holistic solution is to create our structures in communities, because there's strength in numbers. When we're living as a community of 500 or 400 people, we have a lot more weight in terms of what we can do, what we can invest, the funds we can have for education, for health, and of course to stand up to the corporations that want to demolish a forest right next door. So there's really strength in numbers, but we need to learn how to work together in harmony, and of course with earth. Because when I went on our land 10 years ago, the land kicked me out through a robbery and total bankruptcy, because I didn't have knowledge of permaculture then, or natural law, and therefore it was very difficult. I was coming in with system thinking onto the land, and the land was like, just kicked me right out. So we gotta, in Russia we have a saying, you measure 7 times, you cut 1. So it's really, really, really is that important. We gotta get the base solid and right. With understanding of natural law, we will be able to stand up to the current system, because we know in our truth what is right and what is wrong. How does nature operate? How does nature create something? How does nature build confidence? And these are the kind of things I'll be sharing with you in our future vlogs. So right now, let's dive straight into the 9 pillars of successful community design. So sadly, after traveling to hundreds of eco-villages, together with our team, we have realized that only 1% are thriving, meaning they're self-regenerating, so the children are coming back after uni and continuing what their parents have started, whether it's going to be the same craft or doing something in the same community and bringing their skills and wisdom towards that. Most of them are failing left, right, and center. Kids look at their parents with torn clothes and they compare it with the glamour, bling bling city lifestyle, and they go so fast. And of course the conflict in the communities has been so much. I mean, some of the folk cannot decide a communal house for 5 years. That's how ridiculous it is. So before I even go into that, it's important to know, how do we start a community? So we first identify the power spots. It is so important to get to know where those vortexes of energies are, and Ibrahim Karim is paving the way in the work with pendulums and biogeometry. So we actually look at the map, divide it into squares, and test with the BG3 pendulum, is it in this square, is it in this square, is it in this square, until you find the right square. Then you pinpoint, is it here, is it here, is it here, and then it'll start spinning clockwise again, and then you can go on the land and choose Bob. It will be sometimes a wider, but I have found 1.5 meter vortex of energy. It's like a circle within the earth, and you go off it and the pendulum goes forward back. As soon as you step on it, boom, it starts rotating. So let's find those power spots. Then we put a stone. In Russia they call it altir, which is a marker stone that we as community or starting members will walk clockwise to ground the energy of the earth and cosmos, and to bring it together and lock it in. So we basically acknowledge with our mother earth that we know that you have a power spot here. We can actually put a round bench seating, super adobe with some cushions. Make sure you don't sit on a cold mass because of later on in life problems. But yeah, some cushions, a nice circular discussion space where we as a community can conduct meetings around this power spot, which will give us guidance and support from the stars as well as our planet. So that's the first thing that we do. The second thing, before we even start doing the permaculture master plan for the entire land, we've got to give a gift to the local town or the local village that we are positioning our community next to. So in our place, we have identified a little spring, which is not even on our land. And there we're going to create a beautiful cob pizza oven with a nice bench to sit, that the bench warms up, a super adobe spiral that you can walk in, take your clothes off, and like Russian people like to do, just to put a couple of buckets of cold water or place to sink into the freezing winter or summer mountain water. So from us, it will be just a gift to the local community, and of course we'll be involving the local children in the process, which immediately engages the local community that's already living there. Once this whole thing is constructed, we can invite the folk and the elders from the town and village nearby and let them know of our intentions. Let them know of our farming community, for example, that we'll be growing this and sun-dried tomatoes and basil and whatever else, and we'll be involving the local folk to help us package the produce, so job creation will be coming. But of course, we really got to mean what we say and say what we mean. So this way we can engage with the local town or village, because no matter how good your intentions are, if you just come in with bulldozers and excavators and do your thing, I'm sorry, but like as we know from example of Osho, the community booted them out with guns. Really, it was a fight to settle there. So to avoid that, let's learn on the lessons from the history. That's why I sometimes question of always living in a moment, because history has a great deal to teach us, the 3 gifts of time. And let's build trust and let's build momentum with the local town as to what exactly we're doing, so we can get their support from the local governors as well. Like this weekend, we're actually planting apple trees on our land, and we have involved a few governors to come in and plant trees with us, because then they have a sense of ownership in the community. They want to assist. It's something new, it's something exciting that's coming in. It is not a hippieville that we're creating where everybody smokes pot all day long. We really got to get real. I mean, I've got no problem with pot, but it happens after hours, so we can really be present with each other and our mother to co-create on earth in synchronicity and harmony, and manifest and be present as to what needs to happen. And because our future communities have to be designed professionally and in integrity with natural law, each other, and of course the surrounding areas that we impact. So after analyzing all the research, meditating and contemplating, I have designed the following 9 pillars, and I will start with the most important one, natural law. It is such a huge subject. I'm just going to pinpoint on a few key parts of it, but as I said, it is massive. But things like the moon and the sun, they have to be considered in our planning and as well as our lives. Of course, it goes down to simple things like solar passive design for our home, but with sun, there is also earth, air, fire, water, time zones. 4:30 in the morning to 7:30 is the earth hour. It's physical. This is where we do exercise, have breakfast, swim, jog. It's all the physical activities. Yes, then we move into air, 7:30 to 10:30, which is mental. This is where we can have a mental compression of our email work and contracts, planning, strategizing, whatever the mental part for you is, you try and do it in that time. Then we move into fire, 10:30 to 1:30, the sun is up. This is when we go out to meet the world, to interact, to go to a yoga class, to meet with clients. We're going out to meet the world, and then of course come back at 1:30 to 4:30 to do creative for water, creative self-expression, giving back, whether it's a clay piece of artwork, some music, some creative writing. And then of course 4:30 to 7:30 it's earth again. People shut shop, go to gym. We have adopted some of the stuff already, but that's really working with the sun key a bit more in detail. And of course there is a lot more detail, but that's just to give you a basic overview. Then of course there is the elemental compass of actions. Again, earth, air, fire, water. When we wake up, we're in a state of stable water. So to activate ourselves to the next state, we have to add air. That's why we have warm lemon water or grapefruit, or if it's a cold morning, it could be a stewed Granny Smith apple to add that sour in. And of course, keep your journal, because some things might not be working. Everybody has a unique body constitution, and that is why there is so much arguments out there in the medical and health fields, because what's working for this guy is not working for this guy. We all have unique body constitutions. So keep a journal right there. Okay, I've tried the sour, it really did me well. Oh, on this morning it didn't, you know. Then if we want to carry on activating our state, we add fire. So that's bitter. This is where we can have some pecan nuts, walnuts, a quinoa with a nut butter, or a cup of coffee. You see, if you just picture this, you've got a square, okay? Water, air, fire, earth. If you go from state of stable water straight to bitter, it actually pacifies you. So the cup of coffee might give you a little boost first thing in the morning, but very shortly after you will crash, because based on alchemical transmutation and alchemy, it's a pacification. Fire, water puts out fire, you know, and fire and water, they just, you know, they die. It's a pacifier. So you really need to meditate and contemplate on this. So after fire, which is bitter, we can go into earth, which is your meat, fish, eggs, nutmeg, all those earthy things, puero, tea, and that will carry on activating. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but that is just to show you how we are meant to be eating according to natural law. So the message to take home, that there is progression to how we're eating, and to keep a journal of what's working for you and what is not working. So really take note of it. Take note of your dreams. And I'm talking to myself as well here. So really just see the patterns, see the messages that are coming from your soul, because it's trying to talk to you. Just to add a little bit more to the earth, air, fire, water. So air is sour. Aquarius is the center sign that rules the air, and is responsible for thoughts. That's why I said mental. Then we've got bitter, fire, and the star sign is Leo, because it's in the center of that, and fire is responsible for your will. Then we have earth, which is salt, and Taurus is responsible, and this is where your resources and capabilities come in. And of course we've got water, sweet, which is all about emotions. Things also work in harmonies. Sweet and sour, they work together in harmony. So things on this elemental compass of actions actually work in harmonies. So see if you can work with those harmonies. But I will be teaching a lot more as I practice more, and I can share from personal experience. Right now, as I said, I'm just starting up learning natural law and really applying it in my life, and keeping a journal and seeing what's working according to my constitution. Like for me, coconut oil is not working. It's a cold body type. I need sesame oil, sunflower oil to really warm me up. So start with a massage in the morning, with the stomach massage. Use sesame oil because it gives me that warmth that my body type needs. Vedic traditions, of course, elaborated a lot more in terms of the Vata, Pitta, Kapha body types. So look into those as well. Identify yourself and really start seeing what's working for you, because what's working for you is not what's working for somebody else, and vice versa. Then there are 7 immutable laws. The law of correspondence, micro and macro, as above, so below. Then there is a law of vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. Then there is an important law of polarity, which John de Martini taken to the nth degree. Everything has a set of poles, a pair of opposites. We have the law of rhythm, the cycles of summer, autumn, winter, spring. The rhythm is so important, and this is what really hammers me when I go on all these travels. I get out of rhythm, and of course my self-worth goes down the drain, and depression sometimes comes in. So really get that rhythm going. As I said, that morning routine to get yourself started and to work according to the natural law in terms of the 7:30 to 10:30 for your mental compression. Try that. It's starting to work for me. Now that I'm applying it, it's starting to work for me. And it also gives you a good break. Like, I'll mentally compress and do all my emails and planning and webinars, and then boom, step out. Go to the shop, go get some organic food, whatever, you know. Such a nice break to come back and do some creative expression. And for me, creative expression could be Photoshop. I really enjoy doing Photoshop as a part of for Ayurveda, you know. So for everybody, it could be a completely different creative expression. So try these things. Then, of course, we have a law of cause and effect. And I needless to say more, we reap what we sow. The law of gender, masculine and feminine. And right now the world is ruled by the cock and the masculine. So let's put more emphasis on bringing out the divine feminine within our woman. And of course, the law of mentalism. You are responsible for things that you create with your mind. So be aware of your thoughts. And I'm again talking to myself here. I'm still learning, but the law of mentalism is an important one. Just want to read you something from Mark Passio that I learned about natural law and man's law. So natural law is based upon principles of truth inherent to creation, and man's law is based upon dogmatic beliefs, construct of the mind. Natural law is harmonized with due to knowledge and understanding, and man's law is compiled with due to fear of punishment. Natural law is universal, exists everywhere as long as the universe existed, and man's law differs from location based upon the whim of legislators, moral relativism. So things like sacred geometry, feng shui, vastu architecture, alchemical transmutation are all going to be added in here. Vortexing and implosion of energies, such as the work of Victor Schauberger, it's all part of natural law. But the natural law that I'm talking about here as a starting point is the way we plan and construct our communities. The second pillar is the law of beauty. We've got to design our communities to be beautiful. Beauty brings inspiration, builds passion, and resonates with life. It increases life in the community and makes us feel like part of a greater whole. So basics like, do not slap a barn in the middle of this field that the entire community is going to be looking at. Maybe design it so you've got creepers that are going to overtake it, or a green roof. You know, there's many ways to hide the building from the being an eyesore on the land. Things like organizing your building materials, and the best example was Arcosanti. All of their stuff that and us permaculturists, we have a lot of rubbish that we know that we'll be using in future, because there is no waste in nature. Everything is a resource. But organizing it, so things are neatly organized, maybe putting a little quick fence up, again growing some grapes and vines over it, so it's all enclosed and greenery. Of course, once again, it's adhering to sacred geometrical proportions when we build, whether it's a rectangular structure that you can do the proportions of 1 to 1.618, or a dome structure where I've used the foundation here of 4.26, which is 1.618 multiplied by itself 3 times. In beauty, our designs are intelligent, practical, and functional. We want to be creating our communities in a natural-based environment, meaning don't go right next to a mining town. I know some folk might say that, yes, but we want to regenerate the earth. but there's plenty land available for very low price, which are still beautiful. Protect that beauty. It will be far easier to start up somewhere where the land has not been destroyed. Of course, there's very far and few pieces of that left, but possibly next to a forest if you're creating a healing community, because the plants are going to take time. So if we are based next to a forest, we can already offer hikes and meditative walks as part of the ecotourism projects that we're doing. I'm a true lover of curvilinear lines. Like Gaudi said, there are no straight lines in nature, so build with curves. Check out the super adobe from Carl Earth. Amazing building material. You can weave and weave and weave and create wetlands and flower beds and benches and little permaculture spirals, the herb spirals, and bring in the curvilinear lines, because they're really going to inspire you as you walk around your land, versus having these lines that are straight, that are not following any contours or earth geometry, that are causing a resistance to the earth and eventually fall down. Beauty will harmonize all the participators within the community. And of course, sound is frozen geometry. There are many more things that we can speak about beauty, but go out and look for yourself. What do you truly find beautiful? And let's bring the law of beauty into our communities so we're inspired to live there. The next pillar is remembrance. Through cultural traditions, truthful history, as well as our ancestral knowledge. So let me just give you an example. The first thing the colonizers did when they colonized Russia, believe it or not, they took us off our natural calendar, which was designed according to the stars, the moon and the sun, and they brought us to a broken Gregorian calendar. Then they took all our traditional holidays that we have celebrated for thousands of years, and they locked them into a first Sunday of the month, or so everything is floating. As soon as you do that, you erase the memory of people. So when they tell us that Russian people were barbarians 1,000 years ago, we swallow that bull. So let's create the cultural traditions and lock them to specific lunar cycle days, because then our ancestors can help us, because they have helped us on these traditional days. The equinoxes, the solstices, the Beltane. There's many traditional holidays that need to be reawakened, and they need to be locked to the correct lunar cycle day. So the calendar creation is something that I'm really passionate about, and I'll chat much more about it in the future. But we're actually going to be designing a 3-dimensional calendar that kids can climb with little dials, where you can lock in on certain shadows that fall in. But it's a big story. It's a project of mine that I've been developing for 10 years to offer as a gift to our entire humanity, a 3-dimensional interstellar sun and moon calendar, which will be a kaleidoscope within, with a rainbow and mist, that you can actually sit inside the rainbow, inside this geodesic dome. It'll be so fun and interactive that I'm hoping it will spread like a viral bomb around the world. Of course, under this pillar is the knowledge of our roots and history. Just 300 years ago, Russia was called Tartaria before it was colonized. Tartaria is not mentioned anywhere in our history books, and we are the Aryan race, Tartaria. So, really bringing in the truthful history, speaking to our grandfathers, finding out from the local indigenous folk that used to live on the land, what really did happen, because it's all so twisted in our schools. So really bringing that knowledge back and starting to write the Book of Kin, which Anastasia speaks of, where we record truthful history for our children to read. So when they're presented with some other nonsense on TV or media, they're like, no, but that grandfather said that, my father said that, my great-grandfather wrote that, and that's all making sense. That is the truth. They can link back to that, because right now it's full-on chaos with opinion of this one and opinion of that one. It's just total mental masturbation, insanity, and it's all warped. When you're acquiring the land, maybe there was a big battle on the land and a lot of blood was spilled and the land is hurt. So possibly you need to do a ritual on the land, around the power spot, and really speak to the mother and find out how you can support. Bring in the woman in these circles, because the woman's intuition is so powerful they might just come in 2-3 days time and say, I had a dream, we need to put this stone there, and we need to open up that graveyard there, or whatever, you know, open up a spring, or bring in some rocks from the river and do a certain shape. So really, possibly it could be even reawakening some of the ancestral traditions from the land, from the native Indian Americans, from the Native Americans, possibly those, unlocking those traditions and bringing some Native Americans onto your land, into your community, might just fix up the pain that was there, or heal it, you know. So this is very important. Let me give you a quick example from Michael Rice. So he's a really cool sacred geometry architect and a mentor of mine, and what he's done is he gets a call from a client, he meets with them on the land, they do a little ritual. It could be a little dance together, a meal, a little celebration, and then a sit into a deep meditation, and boom, what do you see, he says to the husband, and he says, I see this kayak. And what do you see, he says to the wife, and she might say, yes, I also see this Vesica Pisces shape. So then they unravel that and maybe build something out of rocks, or do a certain shape, or do a certain embedded mark into the land, and boom, the land starts supporting the project that they want to create. So they'll go to the authorities to get the approval of this building, and Michael Rice builds weird stuff. It's just all so, I mean, you think this is weird? Michael Rice's stuff is full on. So this big burly man is like, I usually don't approve anything, and I just had to give you a stamp. You know, he'd never approve something as weird as that, and he just says, go for it. This is what a little bit of a ritual work on the land and really speaking to the land can do for our projects. I know the codes and regulations are very strict, but try it. Try some of these things that I'm speaking about. See what's working for you. See what's working for the land. But deep healing on the land and remembering truthful history is crucial. Connect with your ancestors. Close your eyes. Picture your grandmother and your grandfather from your mother's side on the left. And then ask your entire ancestral line from your mother's side to be present here now, and see them, a whole mass of people on the left. Then picture your grandfather and your grandmother from your father's side, and ask the ancestors from your father's lineage to be here now, present, and see them there. And then ask your entire ancestral line to assist you with building a community, or with a certain project, or with certain guidance, with a split a fork in the road. You know, ask them, because if you do not ask for help from your ancestors, they cannot assist us at all. They cannot intervene according to natural law. So ask, and they will be there to help you. You might receive an interesting dream, but be present and keep a journal. Don't move too much in your bed when you wake up. So really have that candle that you can just, you know, have a lighter, and just minimal movement goes on, and just write a few words that you can then unravel the whole dream. Some key features, maybe a little picture that you sketch, you know, in the middle of the night. So really be, ask your soul to give you those dreams, and pay attention and record your dreams as they come, because the answers are there. So the next important pillar is awakening the creator within, and that's just how I named it, through cultural celebrations, tradition, and play. Because games break rigidity in our communities. When old and young play together, it really brings the community together. Some of the first kisses in the old age used to happen during games. They're all dancing and doing their thing, and he kisses a girl in the cheek. Oh, everybody takes a note. She goes a little bit red, and you know. Otherwise, how do you do it? Like, hey baby, I want to chat with you. You know what I mean? So games are really, really fun, and we've got to bring them into our communities. And if it's certain traditional celebrations, then lock them onto the lunar cycle like they used to be in the olden times, so we can get the support from our ancestors. So here, things like Children's Interactive Park is this climbing thing that I've been designing with giant dream catchers strung out of rope, which I've actually trained our Africans to do. A 6-meter dome with a dream catcher with a spiral going up, and I had 50 kids on this dome. Like, awesome. So children's interactive park, it's the hikes for the children, it's the little tree houses. You know, why are our children drowning in the media and their little devices? Because there is nothing else more fun. So be more fun. Wear a cool hat every day if you have to for your kids. Create awesome interactive spaces where children can play together and get outdoors. And I can speak from personal experience. A couple of years back, we ran a workshop where we did this spiral, very similar to one behind me, a permaculture earthwork, where, you know, you fill it with logs, sticks, mulch, manure, which I actually trained in my course. But anyway, the kids left their PlayStations and came and dug with all toppies, the adults, the whole weekend. They had so much fun, because the only reason they're drowning in their games because they're bored. There's nothing else to do. They're just escaping because the schooling system sucks. I mean, they have to sit there for, you know, hours and hours, which is not natural. We learn through experience. We learn through movement. You know, don't underestimate how much emotional and psychological and mental growth happens through games. I mean, we can add certain levers into our playground so a kid can lift up 5 children through, like, Newton laws. Nature-based outdoor education. We've got to make those super cool plant-shaded classrooms that our children can climb and interact with and learn. And this is something I'd like to possibly ask some of you folk to help me to design. Well, there's no problem with design, but really to fine-tune it and to co-create these awesome playful spaces with even the calendar itself, which I mentioned just now, can be created as an interactive space where kids can climb on it, turn certain things, dial these Mayan calendar cogs that you've seen, you know, where you can see the different shapes moving. And then through that, we can teach our children how these calendars work, how nature creates, how stars move. So much stuff can be taught through games and interactive play spaces. And of course, bring in the multiple festivals onto your land. As I mentioned earlier in the previous webinar, please check it out if you haven't seen it. The festival ground is created in the nut orchard. The pecan nuts are easily collected through a short lawn, and festival ground, the camping, will be in the same nut grove, so the folk can be hidden from the sun. So this is where we stack the permaculture functions. But bring in the festivals, because the festivals are going to bring in new talent, new life, a new inspiration. Your kids will love to come and check out the festivals and all the exciting things that will happen there. So definitely plan in a festival ground with a camping spots, preferably in a food forest garden. How awesome would that be? And of course, everything is within walking distance in our community. So today, Johnny, your son, goes out and makes a knife with Sipo, one of the craftsmen. Next week, he'll go to a glass blower and blow a beautiful chandelier or a little cone. The day after, he'll go to a clay maker and, you know, create your beautiful sculpture. But the diapason, the wide range of the scope of what your children can engage in and experience is this big in our communities because of the master craftsmen that are got to be there. These are the folks that are going to be building the homes, that are going to be making the window frames, the woodworkers, the clay, the potters. Everybody is there, whoever you need, according to your community theme, which I'll mention just now. The next important pillar is resilience through biomimicry, as well as self-regenerative biodiverse design. So here things like earthworks on contour are in. Permaculture in its fullest are in. Food forest gardening with 13 layers, starting from little grasses, the ground covers at the bottom, the pennyroyals, then moving on to rosemaries and little shrubs, lavenders, then moving on to taller things like raspberry bushes, and then dwarfed pear, a macadamia nut, a cherry, and then going into your overstory of full-grown mulberry tree like this one outside here. 60 feet high. And of course you've got, in the tropical climates, the palms that cast very little shade, and then you top it all up with a creeper such as a bean or grapes creeping over all your trees. So that is truly a multi-story design. And a wizard here is Martin Crawford. He is genius in food forest gardening, and he's also a mentor and a teacher of mine. Living Machines from John Todd, which is also a teacher of mine, but that can really treat the radioactive waste and toxic sewage and rivers and industrial waste through these clear containers with reflectors on the back. It's a full living machine that can really heal the water even after it's gone through the worst abuse. Of course, topping it up with spiral implosion vortexing, which will really erase the memory of that plumbering and bring the water to its original pristine state. And of course, I cannot leave out regenerative biotecture. It's the architecture that is fully holistic and treats your waste, grows your food, everything I've been speaking about. So for example, on the front side of this curve will be a quarter face geodome with a greenhouse turning this thing into an earthship. There is a wetland behind me which is linked to my bath, and the water zigzags, and at the end is a pump that will sprinkle out the surrounding garden and push the water to a header tank which will gravity feed and flush you loose. Solar passive design, mycelium filters, which are all things that I'm including in our training, plants producing oxygen, and of course the 5G and electromagnetic radiation, which is something I'm adding into to protect the dweller within from the harmful effects of upcoming 5G, which they're switching on in 2020. Towers and towers and towers are going up all the way back in Johannesburg, which I stopped one of the towers by just getting 4 signatures of the 4 homes around it, but they've built it 300 feet later, but loads of 5Gs coming in. So things like shungite and orgonite imploded into our building materials for our walls and ceilings. And things like Bio-Mimicry. Here, this cube harmonizes the harmful effects of electromagnetic radiation from Ibrahim Karim, Bio-Mimicry. So the homes will have a certain sculptural element which I'm still developing, and will be working closely with Ibrahim Karim to actually perfect these sculptures that will harmonize the vertical negative green carrier wave, which is destructive for our biological systems. So this is what I mean by true biotectural design. Homes that can really, if there is an apocalypse, this home must be able to protect us. So right underneath my feet, I have a 40,000 liter tank, 10,000 gallons, which, you know, I could just drain out and plaster it, and then I have a space where one could store food, other provisions, and of course hide in case something terrible like a nuclear bomb that will go off. So yeah, well, I know communities is where we're going, but we also got to be getting ready for the worst, not in fear but in practical reality. So our homes have to be able to protect us, have storage of food, and of course grow us food from wastewater all year round with the greenhouse geodome behind me, or like the earthships do. I mean, I'm standing on shoulders of giants. I'm not claiming any of this as mine. I'm just putting it together, adding a sacred geometry and natural law aspect, and of course bringing in the biogeometry for electromagnetic radiation protection. So I'm just compiling a few of the masters that I have learned from into one holistic living structure. And this is my dream, and this is why I have taken the last 12 years to create our online Living Eco Home Masterclass. The next super important pillar is unity via a common vision and magnificence of individuals' passions, values, and strengths. This is so important. If you do not have a common vision, then people are going to start pulling the community apart. In Russian communities, they we're in the beginning stages, inviting people who just read the books. Oh, you read the green book? Boom. Then the property developers got caught on, and they said, okay, just tell them you read the green book and they'll let you in. So, really, you can't go and do that anymore. That's what's making communities fail. So you got to be specific about a theme for your community. So the presentation I did to you in the previous webinar on the 250-acre permaculture master plan for our community in the south of Russia, the vision and theme for that community is it's a community starter community pack. So it has several training centers in permaculture and farming, agroforestry, the eco-architecture and ecotech. We've got the conference space, we've got 2 schools for children, we've got the magical temple where we'll teach mysticism and natural law. So the theme of our community is to teach the teachers who will teach other communities to start up. What is the theme of your community? And that's linked up with your values. And I'm not talking about values such as honesty and truth, because that's more morals. I'm talking about hardcore, what's important to you. So simple, go to my mentor's site, Dr. DeMartini, drdemartini.com, and there is a thing on the left called Determine Your Values. 13 questions. How do you spend your time? How do you spend your money? What are the 3 types of things you talk about in a social conversation? What are the 3 types of books that you read? What are the 3 types of goals that you set that actually come into life? So my vision is to build a fractal network of communities around the world. I don't have that yet. We're starting with the first community, but here on a half-acre property, I created all curvilinear lines and prototype things for our future communities in practice. So it's not what you're thinking about, it's what goals are you setting that are actually slowly coming to fruition. So basically 13 questions, you get 39 answers, you group them and you get your values, your specific, what's important for you. So if I talk to you in your values, you'll prick up your ear. If I talk to you not in your values, it's like, and you forget my name after I said it. So for me, my values are teaching. I love teaching. That's why I'm teaching you. Nobody has to kick me out of bed to teach. Of course, working the Ayurveda Academy and business. So I'm an entrepreneur. That's me. And inventing and designing. Love it. So those are the 3 values in their order. They sometimes change. So as I get an injection of cash, my business might, go into number 3, and then I'll spend more time on teaching and designing. They also change, as I said, gradually. When you were 20, you had a different set of values, and they gradually changed. They also changed drastically. A mom drives with 4 kids, has a car accident, all 4 kids die, and the family will go down, the work will go up, for example. So that's values. So if we work with people's values, which is ultimately what they truly, truly love doing, and we have a common vision. So let's say our community is a farming community, okay? Then in that case, the people that we're looking for in our community will be quantity surveyors who can measure the land's elevations and peg out the earthworks. We're looking for permaculturists that can implement the stuff. We're looking for agronomists, the agroforesters. We're looking for nursery wizards who can kickstart seedlings, because without seedlings, it's like, really, it's not going to happen. So these are the kind of folk that we're looking for in our farming community. So if you have a bunch of folk that you're starting a community with, you really got to identify what is the theme. What are you going to be focusing on? It's so important, especially in the beginning stages. And I'll tell you why. Because you need to start 1 or 2 businesses that are going to start to bring in the financial income. Okay? And the reason that's important is because that will bring stability, and you'll be able to buy building materials, and you'll be able to self-regenerative, grow and multiply and expand and learn and buy new clothes if you have to, or buy a sewing machine to sew new clothes. All of those things need cash, and we need to be so focused on, for example, the first 2 or 3 businesses in the beginning stages of our communities, because they are going to create stability. Because when they are rolling, ticking over, only then do we start inviting other community members to permanently move onto the land because we have something working. And I'll just quickly mention, this is a model of slow moving onto the land, which I quite like, because myself, just ripping out of the city and coming onto the land, I burned really hard. In fact, I burned so hard I couldn't get my decor business back on track because it just crashed so badly. There are folk in your communities that are going to be ready to rip the ground, and they're like, full power, let's do it. And there'll be folk that, you know, I'm in, but you know, I still got a job. Let them keep their job. It could be 3-5 years time. They keep on putting in $100, $200 in. So the folk on the ground can build in the infrastructure, develop 1 or 2 or 3 businesses on the land, and only once those businesses are ticking over, then in 3-5 years time, those folk can safely move onto the land. Of course, the land from the city that they're living in could be maybe 2-3 hours max, so they can still come on the weekends and put in the sweat equity and engage with their hands, you know, their whole being practically onto the projects. But really, do not jump and go. Slow transition. So yes, identify the people that are going to be on the land, but they need to have the support from brothers and sisters who are still working in the cities, and there got to be trust. And in order for them to have trust, you gotta utilize everybody's values, because if they do what they love and they love what they do, they're going to thrive. And even if there is conflict, they'll be able to put their egos aside and deal with it. And of course, we'll mention it in one of the next pillars, conflict resolution. But just now to touch it, if people are doing what they love, they will be more than likely willing to resolve the conflict for the greater good, as long as they can continue doing what they love. So unity of vision and magnificence of individuals' values, passions and strength is so important. Another example under this pillar would be a mastermind group. When you form a mastermind group with a few folk, you actually create another entity that starts feeding you with extra energy, because the group is created this network and this extra entity, and the entity is self-feeding the group back. And so there's 3 people or 5 people in the mastermind group suddenly feel extremely more powerful because of this entity that's supporting them. So that's how unity of vision is playing out in a simple mastermind group. Of course, we need to have diversity within our team. So in our team, we have a strategist, we have a person that can talk to funders, we have a few conscious entrepreneurs, we have a few master craftsmen, we have a few plant people there, we have an animal lover that's coming in, that's going to rejuvenate our land with manure through electro-fencing and moving the cows from one place to the next. You know, you gotta have a diversity in your team, but you still have to have a unity of vision. And of course, ask the deep question, like, what are we doing and why are we doing it? These are the deep questions we have to ask. How much value are we prepared to put onto the earth? How much faith do we have in our project and natural law to support us? How much faith do we have in our planet, in our creator, to support us through our project? So the faith, I think, is actually super important, because when all hell breaks loose, faith and unity of vision are what's going to keep the community together. Of course, understanding of your target market, of the folk that will be visiting your community, if it's an ecotourism theme, you know, understand who are the people, what are their pains, and how you can approach them. It's basic marketing. And to add this pillar, identifying your human resources. Who's in your team? What are their values? What are their passions? What are their loves? And what have they done? And what can they assist the team with to co-create the greater whole? So unity of vision, I'd say it's one of the most important ones. All right, so let's briefly talk about the investment model. So just like permaculture, we do not want to have one thing, like one investor paying for the whole land, because he's going to own the whole project. So I would start with a little crowdfunding campaign, which can generate possibly $10,000-$20,000 if you're lucky. I haven't had that luck with my crowdfunding campaign. Of course, if you're launching plastic boobs that vibrate, the millions are being thrown at you. But when it comes to sustainability, and by the way, Indiegogo did not pay me out for my last crowdfunding. They're just ignoring my email. So there's definitely a block in terms of the system wanting these sustainable communities coming out. But let's say you do generate $10,000-$20,000 in the crowdfunding campaign, which is awesome. So you could use the money two ways. The first thing you do is you can build a little project together. So you run a little seminar, and because I love eco-architecture, I would run an eco-dome workshop. So the super adobe and the hempcrete, like this one, we'll build it up and we actually test the team out. Can we work together? Can I work with you? Can I work with you? So really check out the team and our compatibility together. And then you take the drawing, the 250 acre master plan, okay, and you beef it up. So you add the 3D, you take it into 3D. You do your landscape. You spend good budget on making a really nice 3D model of this thing. You put in your windmill, your bakery, your micro businesses, your greenhouses, your dehydrators for sun-dried tomatoes, whatever your theme is, whatever your community is. So you really have that sexy 3D presentation, which might even cost as much as $10,000. Yeah, but it's really nice because then you are ready for investors. You cannot go with this drawing. I mean, you can get it, I can get it, but you cannot go there to investors with this drawing. So you really got to step it up quite a notch. And then another way of investing is we have a virtual game. So we actually take the same 3D drawing. You see how I'm stacking permaculture functions in the digital world. So you take the same 3D drawing and now you have a virtual game that's linked to the real piece of land where people can vote for who wants to vote for the baker. Yes, and then voting for the baker, you've got cameras and the bakery is going up, the windmill is going up, the beautiful cafe, ferro cement, stunning Gaudi roof is going up, and there's cameras live showing this, and people are like engaged. They've got the game, they've voted for the bakery, and they see this bakery going up live. So it's like a sim city, but it's linked to a real piece of land. So really awesome idea. So if any of you folk want to develop it, just hit me an email with subject line virtual game. Anyway, so then the other model of investing is pensioners. Okay, so it's pensioners who really, like that granny who stayed in San Francisco, wants to get out, seeing the whole world collapse, and she just wants to invest her money into something worthwhile. So of course you show her the business plan for this bakery. You obviously find out her needs, objections, and all of that. You compile a little business plan based on that. And if it matches your needs, let's say you do need a bakery and she always wanted to bake bread, let's just say, boom, she invests into the project. So you match her with the best master craftsman baker that you know. If bakery is what you guys are, if ecotourism is what you're doing with the bakery in mind, then you have the master craftsman. Otherwise you wouldn't be thinking of a bakery if you don't have the baker there, you know what I mean? So you always link your projects with what your visions, what your passions are, and what your folk love doing, as I mentioned earlier. So you put the two together, and then boom, the next thing, this bakery goes up, and then the micro investor granny is happy because she's seeing her dream come to life. She gets a place in the community. She needs to know that she's going to be cared for as well. So maybe that's also put into the budget, that what you need from her is that care. Care we might need to create extra wheelchair roads from her to the bakery, or whatever the case may be. I don't want to go into details, but you want to feed the hand and support the hand that supported you. So and you put that all into the plan of what her needs are and so on. So pension investment, I've been thinking about it for a while because I'm seeing all these retirement communities going up and they suck. They're buildings right next to each other. They're looking at another building in front of them. They've got a 2 by 2 meter piece of lawn in front of them, and that's it. Basically the only thing that sells them onto this is that that there will be some care, and in terms of like they put them some on drugs if they need, and so on. So maybe you build that into your community if that's what you feel that that's a good angle to take in terms of pension investment. Then you can put in there the little care, a little holistic, not hospital, but like a holistic healing center with herbs and so on and so forth. But again, see the vision of your community. What is the theme? What are the passions and strengths of your members? And if that's something you want to engage in. So the next investment model is angel investor. So now you've got a very sexy drawing, 3D, you've got your business plans for your micro businesses, and or for example, you want the training center. You remember the training center that I spoke of? It's that building right here. Okay, there it is. You could call it like a solar living institute. So it's an eco-tech and eco-architecture training center, multifunction. It's got greenhouses on the sunny side. It's got some rooms on the back. It's got vegetable gardens. And of course, it's got some plots of land that you can build up with students like here. And you can actually build them up like Carl Earth model and like our model and Earthship model. You build a few units up, and that's why you left a few of these plots of land. And, so when students come, you build it. You present this to investors. It's a multifunctional, multi-purpose training center with greenhouses that can have microgreens and aquaculture and food production all year round. You've got a few rooms on the back, some vaults that can be quickly replicated because you're using one formwork. Once you build the roof, then you remove it and you put next, and it goes up pretty quickly. And the coolest thing is it uses a variety of building methods. You've got some tires for the foundation, you've got some super adobe for the walls. If you're going second story, you may be using some straw bales, some hempcrete for little structures and roof, and a bit of ferro cement. So you've got a variety of building methods that are being learned whilst the construction is happening of this multifunctional center, which can be repurposed at a later stage. For example, it can turn into a healing center once you've got another eco-architecture module, a training center going up, or so it can be repurposed, doesn't have to stay locked into what it is designed in the beginning. But the message to take home, it's multi-purpose, multifunctional, grows all year food around, it's a variety of building materials, and of course it's got the water ecosystems like I've built up on this property with wetlands and greenhouses growing food from wastewater, water storage tanks, biochar filtration, all these things we teach. The cool thing is that all the members of the community who were participating in building the center can now build anything else on the land. They're trained in 6 methods of construction, they're trained in grey water, they're trained in water harvesting, and so on and so forth. So when you need a school building, you can come and decide, okay, well, what is the best for our climate, and solar angles and solar passive design and wind, and you're like, okay, right, we're going to go for hempcrete on a second story, and we'll use straw bale because it's really hot on this wall. So you can actually build whatever you want thereafter. So from the seed training center, it spreads out. And so now angel investor is keen. He's like, it's not some pie in the sky idea. It's a real project. It's multi-purpose, multifunctional. It can house 300, 400 people, seating for a conference, or it could be repurposed as a restaurant in the future. So, and investors like that because it's not a dead weight. It's a very dynamic training center, and people will just come there just to see this beautiful creation because it combines many permaculture methods, many building techniques, and of course it's got to be super sexy. And that's why we love radial buildings, so they really that harness that cosmic energy. And of course it's got a few vegetable gardens around it, so it's really a starting point for the community. That's why we call it the seed. So angel investor, sure, $350,000. You're asking for good terms. Maybe first 3 years you don't pay interest, and then in the next 3 years you pay it off. And investors, there are loads of investors that can look at such models because they understand sustainability is necessary. They understand that it's not an easy road, but with the vision of such a multi-purpose, multifunctional training center, sure, $350,000, $400,000, boom, paid, you get the thing off the ground. And again, you're testing your team, you're seeing how you can work together, who's who, what are people's strengths, what are their weaknesses, so it's a good first project to engage yourself with. So angel investors are awesome, conscious ones. Again, need to see the business plan, need to see the team, what the team have done, and of course now you've got a building on the land, so like this home, and you have this training center built, and you can approach more investors for other micro businesses. But get that training center, of course, ticking over and rolling. Start inviting people. So you'll need a person in your community who is a CEO specialist and a marketing guru and a website developer and a Photoshop master. So obviously there's dynamic team that's coming together to co-create this living space together with you. So you're obviously searching for folk who are meeting the skills that you require to fulfill the dream and the vision of the community. Another cool idea is possibly a motivational film, some eco film that you can create as you're building this training center or the vision of the community. So a nice film could generate some good donations for you guys, so just think about it. And of course you've got some property sales. So there's no private ownership in the community, so keep that in mind, but definitely could allocate. So if people come in, so for example you can have your key land and then you can have the land next door that you will be developing as a property development. But obviously nobody wants to invest into an empty piece of land. So once you've got a quarter or 1/3 of your infrastructure going up as per the master plan, and people can see, gosh, you guys are on it, you're building, there is life, there is action, the fruit gardens are going in, the fruit forests are being planted, the excavators are digging dams, they're like, yes. They know that they're not going to give you your money and you're going to run, because there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of people have been dropped like that. So next door land, property development, these folk not necessarily have to be participating all the time, because the people on the land who are living with you are going to be doing this all the time. So they're going to be there for 80% of the time. The people in the property development might be, where they're buying and we're building for them, they might come there for 3 months of the year or 6 months of the year. And that's fine. We also obviously want them to be conscious, so they don't start spraying fertilizers and so on. But here we go, there's another investment opportunity. So anybody who wants to live next to this drawing that I showed you, come, and people will come because they see the necessity for holistic education, organic food, stable food forest systems. You could sell off plots, or you could sell plots with completed homes. So that's something you need to check out if that's where where you're going. Then of course you could have property sales within your piece of land. So that's to other community members. And that's where we've got that gradual transition. So there's a few folk like yourselves, for example, want to rip the ground, they want to be on the land, and then people who are still entangled in the city life, and there's 99% of them, they want to be part of it, but they can be sending money for their property, and a few businesses, as I mentioned. I'm finding a lot of folk who really want to do something great, that quite broke, because as the system collapsing around us, the money is being pulled out. So you really got to be very entrepreneurial savvy to move and groove to bring the finance in. Otherwise you're locked in on a job, and then you are sending money to your community members, and there's got to be that trust that in contracts that you guys are, this is what you're building, this is the vision, and in 5 years time, once you've got the businesses ticking over and rolling, then and only then will they quit their jobs and move on to the land. So when you're engaging with your investors, of course, try and make the commitment to you for the first 3 years you're building. You're not paying interest, you're not paying anything, because that'll just cripple you guys. And then maybe you start paying interest on the 4th year only. So just work out good terms, get some business savvy people in your team that can that have run businesses successfully, and figure it out. But definitely first 3 years you can't be paying any interest or can't be paying anything back, because you are building. So that's just some of the funding models for our communities. I'm sure there's many more. Please post them in the comments below. I'd love to hear about them. As I said, this research is coming not just from me, it's coming from our team members, from folk I met in America, and all over the world. Even in Nepal, there was some interesting information being thrown into this whole pile. Please scroll below, comment if you need if you want to add something or you've got questions about something, but let's carry on. Next heading is inevitable success. You got to start your community with conscious entrepreneurs, because they know what it takes to get projects off the ground financially, and that's important. Okay, and then you got to have master craftsmen or your teachers of yoga teachers, whatever the community is. So in our community, master craftsmen are key. So the master craftsmen, they know how to take nothing and turn it into something, and entrepreneurs know how to basically take that something and multiply it and bring financial wealth. So, and everything is coming back into the community. So I just want to share a little bit about the model of cooperation that we're using, and I'm sure there's many more out there, but the model that we really like is this Chertayev model. Okay, of course he was murdered, but nevertheless, let's carry on. Yeah, so he started one of the most successful cooperatives within entire USSR, and within 5 years it just shot through the roof, and that's why they took him out. So the model goes as follows. What they did was they took the people who you know, in that case where the old cooperatives, how long did the father work? How long did the grandfather work? And based on that information, they've allocated shares of the people. So let's say if we're starting something from scratch, we will see what can people put in after the testing stage, what are the skills, you know, and basically we take the land. Okay, let's assume we already have the land. The land gets divided into two. There is, you know, living, and then there is business. Okay, so let's talk about business. So the business, people are working in the business, and the profits get split a few ways. The one goes in, obviously gets distributed between the shareholders, so dividends based on their input, and input can be time and money, and obviously it gets converted to money, and then that figure is your share in the in the business, in that particular business. So the businesses pay dividends based on your input or various inputs from the various people, and then some of the money goes towards a rental of the land. So the businesses actually pay the community rental for the land that they occupy the business on. Okay, and the third thing that happens is there is a fund, the various funds that get formed. There is a medical fund, there is could be a travel fund, there could be a miscellaneous fund. You know, there's a variety of funds, educational fund, definitely. So, and then the businesses pay some of their profits towards these funds. Now, what happens with the funds is the funds work in a very interesting way. So the doctors will get paid a bonus should the patients in the community do not get sick. So that's a very interesting model, which I believe still in China they're implementing in some parts of China. So the doctors actually make something extra if the folk do not get sick. So it's more of a integral medicine practitioner. So he'll come to your home, he'll check your lifestyle, he'll check how's your eating, when did you do your last fast, maybe prescribe you some practices such as stomach massage or certain exercise. Just have an overall check into your life holistically, you know, and how you're living, and you know, whether that's gonna be destructive for you or not, and based on that, then of course, you know, with herbal medicines and medicinal teas and all organic food you're growing, you know, folk sickness is going to drop tremendously, because also there's no that stress of working for the dollar and seeing 98% of it leaving to the government who bombs other cities for oil and whatever else. And you know, but we don't want to go there. So the teachers get an extra bonus from the fund should the children get accepted into top universities and come back to the communities to bring in the wealth of knowledge and carry on what their parents have started. So the teachers actually get an extra bonus for that. How cool. You know, same as in those days, the policeman, the safety fund would also, you know, have that holistic approach, so people don't go loony and start raping and robbing, you know. So really, but obviously in our communities there's going to be none of that, but still I'm just sharing with you how the fund works. And the people who lived on the land, they received an income from working in the businesses, okay, they share, because I don't believe we really our communities are salary based. I don't believe that we're going to be employing people in our communities for salary, and then whether the tractor is broken or not, the guy still gets his $2,000-3,000. I really don't think that's the way to go forward. What I feel is the right way is, there's much to learn from kibbutz, where they distribute the wealth or the profits, So I'm not saying we're going to take that model exactly, excuse all the barking dogs, but we are going to be learning some from what is working. So, in terms of distribution of profits based on the inputs, I don't think it's also even distribution, because some people put less hours or more money and more time, so it's definitely different inputs from people, but so that's going to be distributed based on that. So it's not a salary based structure, it's more of a shareholder structure, and that's why you've got to be very careful how quickly you accept people. So let's talk about that. It could be a 3 months, like 2 week, come and check out the land, meet the people, then 3 months, let's say probation, come and volunteer, build a few projects, check, let's see if we can work together, and then of course you can have a year or 2 years where people can really work close knit together on certain projects, and you see that guys or energy exchange and involvement, and then you can draft a contract or share based on the history and what's being presented to you from a particular member. And just talking about agreements, so you're going to have a different agreements with volunteers, you're going to have a different agreements from your master craftsmen, you're going to have different agreements with your investors. So just showing you the depth of where this needs to go. We can't put it all in one pot, because there's different involvement. Investor is not putting any time, he's just putting the money, so it's treated differently to somebody that's putting money and time, such as a community member or volunteer that comes in and suddenly he's drinking beer every night or getting so drunk that he's causing damage. And so there's got to be different agreements for different scenarios and different folk, different types of folk in the community. So just keep that in mind. You got to have a very clear entrance and exit procedures and agreements. So people need to know how they can come in and what they need to put in and how they can come out, because sometimes misfortunate things do happen, such as somebody has to leave to care for their mom. Although in an ideal world that we want to create, we really want to bring the mom to our community so she can be cared for, but sometimes it's not possible. Maybe she needs hospitals, and we are far out from that. So they have clear entrance and exit strategies and agreements, so people know up front. So what we're really trying to create is this living cell. It's this microorganism, this beautiful drawing that I presented for you. It's like a stem cell. It's faceted, it's quite resilient, because if we're having a drought and this is not growing, we're running workshops, or we have drought resistant crops such as cactuses, whatever, so it's really tiered up, so it's not all our eggs in one basket. This living cell, and that's why the word biomimicry comes in quite handy. This is what we're designing, a living permaculture ecosystem that is just so resilient that can go through anything. And of course it's got to be protected, and there are ways of protecting the land as well. I know in Russian laws if you start planting indigenous red book plants that are rare, obviously after you've built all your buildings, you can declare, if you have a certain variety, I believe it's like 15 varieties and a bit of quantity of them, then you can declare your land as a national park. Now you've got all your buildings, they can't, obviously find out the laws in your country, but basically then the land is locked. And if you've got, if you put, for example, landing strips for eagle, not strips, but these big platforms up that eagles can land, and suddenly you're bringing wildlife that's been extinct from this area for years. As soon as they find that out, then 10 kilometers within the border of your land is all protected and declared as a reserve. So I just want you to toiter, what's the word, with these ideas, because this is what we're going to be doing in Russia, to really lock down the land and surrounding lands from corporations, from just coming and mining and destroying the scenery and the earth. So please think about these things. I'm sure there are other loopholes, as we call it, but this is how we can work with the current systems to really protect ourselves. There's also ways in Russian law that we can take up big pieces of land, 400 hectares, 1,000 hectares for free. You basically have to especially the land that belongs to the government, which I believe a lot of America and a lot of Russia. So you basically have to show them that the erosion galleys are increasing. From Google Earth, you pull up old stats and you show them, look, your erosion galleys in the last 5 years are increasing, and you take the soil samples and basically show them that the soil is depleting in nutrients, microelements, and everything in it. So if you can prove that, you can basically then take land for almost free, okay? Because you're going there and saying, well, you're destroying the land. Here's the proof, here's the proof, here's the proof. And based on that, in Russia, we can take thousands of hectares free of charge, or for ridiculous amounts like $100, So really something to look into, and I will be investigating that. But if you are interested in this concept, please contact me. I do need funding and support, so I can go out, get a lawyer, a land lawyer employed, and we can get through this and really take large pieces of land in Russia. That's, I can only speak on behalf of Russia right now. So please contact me, but ultimately we need donations, we need support if we want to get that going. You got to understand that we do not have 30 years for trial and error. This community is got to work properly and professionally straight away from start. And that is why I'm taking such deep care to explain to you the 9 pillars and all the points for inevitable success of our communities. And as I said, there's much more. Let's bring in the research. That's why we're creating our social media community network, where we can post and share what's working and what we can add to our stable communities, and elaborate more on the 9 pillars, as well as add other pillars. So really, we do not have 30 years, and that's one of my problems with the Venus project. They're presenting this glamorous city that's going to be utopia. Robots are going to be building for us, but this thing is going to cost, I might be wrong, $3 billion or something stupendous. I don't even think we've got that money lying around. And of course, it's going to take years to build. And then what? We might be facing the same problems and challenges whilst robots are growing us food. Where's that touch with the mother? Where's that connection? Where's that getting our hands dirty in the soil, or doing yoga outside? So I don't know. I'm really not sold on the Venus project. 10 years time that is going to take, and $3 billion. I really think it's about creating this training center, multifunctional healing center, and then growing a community of that, building the homes ourselves. It was so much fun to build this home. It went up in 2 weeks with 20 people, really, the shell. And then it took me and 2 guys another month to finish it, So it's really, really fun. And we can build homes for each other. We can run workshops and spread the knowledge versus climbing into debt. There's so much we can do, but it's really that micro, starting small and growing from there and growing from there. Do not go all big. I've made huge mistakes by digging out half a hectare mandala garden, which completely dried up on the slope. Please start small, do a little berm, horseshoe berm around a tree, see how that performs, make a little wetland, which we teach on YouTube. Start from there and grow outwards. But we do not have 30 years for another mistake. Oh, well, that didn't work. So really take care when starting your community, finding those power spots, connecting to the land, talking to the land, listening to your dreams, doing your research, brainstorming in our community, a social media platform that we're building. Just do the groundwork properly, because you want this thing to succeed. We want to move into our communities and not move out. And I'm a believer that we can reincarnate back into our pieces of land. If our bodies are buried on it, and when we die, we don't have fear, we go out with a smile. We explain to our children that we are going to be coming back through their children or grandchildren. They're aware of it, and boom, 150 years later, little Anasta is walking around and, Granddaddy, why does that house look familiar, that dome? And the granddad is like, yeah, you build it. I mean, imagine you coming back with memory into a garden with 300 varieties of fruit trees, nuts, herbs. You've got a community of people around you. And wow, what a pleasure, versus being torn out of your stomach, of your mother's stomach, in some hospital, really, what a difference. And this is what we need to connect with. We need to connect with our souls and our true purpose on this planet. And I just want to touch on a little bit on the vibes of our community. So we want to get people who have these three qualities. They need to have a certain level of spiritual development. I'm sorry, but some Christians coming in and they're like, we're all sinners, and that's all they say, we're all sinners, and and I don't want to step on toes, but really, guys, come on, we've got to grow up. I'm not a sinner. I was not made in sin. And, really, I don't resonate with any of that stuff. So we need to have people with a certain conscious involvement that are going to be coming in. And there could be Christians, there could be Muslims, there could be, we welcome everybody, but without the dogmatic enforcement of ideas. I do not want my child to go to somebody's home and all they hear is how we're going to burn in hell. Come on, man, really. So let's have a certain level of spiritual development from the people we accept in our communities. Second, we need to arrive from a position of giving. So sure, it's fair energy exchange, but there's definitely more emphasis on giving. So give and take, but give a bit more. Always give a bit more, because we've just taken so much from the earth. We really have to give and give and give and give and give. So take people in from a position who are wanting to give more than take, because it'll all come back to them anyway. So let's have that mentality with the folk that we're taking in. And of course, we need to take in people that love to work physically. So even myself, I spend quite a bit of time on the computer. I do enjoy pottering in the garden. No, don't put me onto the land to dig trenches. I'm not built for that, And that's why I use, in Africa here, our Zimbabweans, because they love it. It's job creation for them, and they can dig all day long. We've dug this 40,000 liter hole by hand with 8 people in 2 weeks. But I'm a teacher, so I work with people's values and strength, but at the same time, it's not the mental masturbators who are WhatsApping all day long and let's fantasize this, let's fantasize that. It's really like, people who love to use their hands, whether it's master craftsmen or whether it's doing something beautiful with the garden, or clay making. There's got to be some of that handwork love towards physical co-creation with using the body and everything that our Creator has given us. Another important part that has to be mentioned is we are not starting our land with me and my hectare and my piece of garden. Where's my land? Where can I start? No, we're starting our community with a communal business, communal gardens, communal business, the training seed center, as I mentioned. And once the businesses start rolling over and bringing in the cash, could be 2, 3, 4, 5 years time, then we're starting to build up our pieces of land and our homes. Because what's been happening in Russian communities, they get in there, they chop up the land into squares, which is stupidity. They see how people are bringing their sickness from the city onto the land, and it's a disaster. The land is kicking them off, all of them, kicking them right off. Communities are falling apart after 25 years, right now, hundreds. So we get in there, we make the business work, we build an Earthship hotel, which I mentioned to you, for example, a series of vaults for 200 rooms. For now, we're living in those rooms, working the businesses, we've got accommodation, it's not ideal. We by now have, for example, our piece of land, and maybe in free time we can start putting our fruit trees and our allocated 1 acre plot, start planning that out, and really don't touch the land for the first year. Really plan it out. Plan where's the wind coming from, where's the sunshine, where's the cold fog drafts coming through, where's the snow falling, everything. You got to take into account, make multiple sketches with tracing paper. Tracing paper, you just layer it up, draw your pathways, draw your fruit trees when you plant them, draw your fruit trees in 25 years time when they're full grown size. Do the top view, do the side view. It's north, south, east, west elevation, so you can see, oh, that tree will overshade the rest of the garden. So really plan your garden, but obviously that the building of your home and your garden, or your home, because that's the biggest expense, will happen once the businesses are starting to make money. Because what's happening now is people start with their home, then they build, they've already left the city, so the city's given them a big finger to, with cash. So whatever savings they have is what they have, but because they haven't started with the business, then they run out short. The houses are not finished, and now boom, and there's no money for communal business. Talking about communal business, another way we could bring in some finances, do we all need cars? Why don't 100 families that are going to come in sell all their cars? Really, sell all their cars. You buy, let's say, 3 pickup trucks, the trucks which can load sand and cement and drive weight and trailers. Then you have maybe 2 or 3 microbuses for communal trips, and you buy a few lightweight vehicles or little off-road vehicles if terrain is not good for folks that want to travel in and out. Then suddenly you have money from possibly 80 cars or 70 cars left, that you have that fund now to invest into a business that's going to thrive. So just think about it. Really cool idea. Got it from Russia. Love it. Community placement. Please do not go far out into the sticks. It makes it so difficult to sell produce, to get supplies, to a little thing, you forget something, boom, 5-hour trip to town, really. But unless you are you've got super marketing online gurus that can get you folk to come from all over the world, even if you are out in the sticks. But from the last workshop in Nepal, after marketing it for 6 months, we had 3 paying students because it was so far out. So really, be close to a little bit to a town, and you can engage them with job opportunities when they can help you. You've got the hardware store down the road, and of course you've got a target market to sell your organic produce or whatever you're doing. So again, what's the theme of your community? And I lived out in the sticks. It wasn't funny. As I said, we had a robbery, far out, alone on a farm, daytime. So really just think about it. Where do you want to be? But I would really try and position ourselves nearby a city, because then people who may be working in the city would love to join your community. They're not too far, and they can be traveling and helping you, as I said, on the weekends, putting some sweat equity and sending some dollars across, and they can check up that you're actually doing what you guys said you were doing as a startup team, building the infrastructure, building the little businesses and so on. So voting structure, and we'll touch on a bit of governance obviously in the future and in our Q&A session, but 1 person, 1 vote. Doesn't matter if you invested $1 million or less. So if you've been accepted in a community, 1 person, 1 vote. And we tend to think that democracy, and I don't like democracy, but some aspects of democracy are working. So this majority really, we take everybody's opinion into account, but really majority wins, and then we can get on and get it done. Because if we try and get everybody to agree, it might be a disaster. And also splitting the teams into groups. So you've got the micro businesses, so the folk are responsible for permaculture gardens and the produce of organic basil and tulsi. Their voting and how they operate doesn't need to involve other people, because it's their thing, unless they need a road from the community or water from the community to get there, and involves the rest of the people, or they need to tap into the main fund or so on. But really, it's this micro groups. What they did in Russia was they split people into 10s, and 10 people selected a leader. So when we had a meeting, let's say we have 200 people, only 20 leaders came to the meeting, and it was much easier to agree with 20 people to agree on something, then it was 200 people, really, and the meetings take much quicker, and so on. So it's something that you would like to possibly look into. And of course, lastly, unless we're creating at least 500 to 1,000 jobs in nearby towns and villages, and we are boosting the economy through ecotourism, export, bringing in international students, unless we're doing that, the government are not interested in us. So really, we've got to come in from that point of, it's not just our sustainability on our land and us being happy whilst the whole world is going to shambles. It's more about how we can serve the people around us, how we can serve ourselves, and how we can serve the government officials and involve them so they partake and have a bit of pride and ownership of the project. Not financially ownership, but really that pride. That's why I said get those government officials to come and plant, but you get the school kids to come and plant. Boost out the media, about your planting tree event or the openings or whatever. So folk, that's it. I know it's been a lengthy class today, but it's really important, and please post your comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Have a beautiful day and an awesome year ahead. In deep gratitude, aho. Whoa!